Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in Georgia, I believe, with René Freedom Acosta, as I know him through Facebook. So, René, can you just introduce yourself and kind of reflect on what it was that led you to become a chiropractor? Maybe a little bit about your upbringing or your background. What inspired you to follow this path?
Yeah. Well, first I got to say that good morning. That you're up nice and early. I like that. But I when you asked me to do this, you know, went. I looked at the message and then I scrolled up and I saw, you sent me a message like 10 years ago. To check out this YouTube video. So I never did. I never like. I don't even know if I saw it. But I clicked on it and went to that video and it was really cool because it was basically you doing kind of the same thing, you know? And I thought, wow, he's been like on mission, his mission, doing his thing, the same thing, all this time. Or at least still having it. And I thought that was like really cool. And that's probably the reason why I agreed to do this, because generally I don't really like to do this too much. I'm not like very comfortable this way. I'm a lot more comfortable, but this is pretty good because it's good technology now. So but anyway, that was pretty weird because I was like talking about technology. I was like, oh my God, he sent me this thing 10 years ago. And, so it's like, here we are 10 years later, we're still, in the chiropractic game. And I just thought that was really cool of you. I wanted to
What did
mention
you
that.
take away from that video? I'm curious. Was there anything that you heard me say that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think like at the time you were either a student or about to not be in that video. And I loved kind of the angle of the student experience or perspective. That was kind of the takeaway on that end. And I guess just making the connection now that you're still kind of trying to work that out, which I'm really, really on board with you on that. Um, so I thought that was cool. But then aside from that, I just thought, wow, this guy's been probably been practicing 10 years. And here he was, it's like just weird. It was technology makes it so strange where it's like, here he is a student. Now I know he's been practicing 10 years. It's like going to the movie to see the whole, but it was a 10-year journey, right? So it just kind of tripped me out. And I thought
Hmm.
that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Well,
And I and
I've
I just
heard it. I've heard it many times be said that the things that stick with you, that never leave you, are the things that you should pay the closest attention to, and
yes.
it's because it's connected inward, like to the core of who you are. And my story, I'm not going to get into, but that's what inspired this project, and I haven't been able to let it go because I continue to ask the same question over and over and over and over of if these schools value students so much, so greatly, why is it that they still just have their admissions departments representing chiropractic to the world? I mean, if we're being honest, people that choose to become chiropractors, a lot of the times it's from their own personal experience, but those that it isn't from their personal experience, it's because there was an admissions department that showed up on their campus and said something that lit up a light bulb in their head, or their mind was like,
Hmm.
oh, I should pay attention, or I should go this way. You know what I'm saying? It's always a
Hmm.
fallback option, I believe, for a lot of these students that end up being dissatisfied because it was a fallback option, not their primary choice. So there's something we could do in this conversation to make it a primary choice. I want to be a chiropractor. I'm grateful that I know that chiropractic exists and that I can follow this path. That's what this conversation is really about. So can you just talk about maybe right now, presently, like, are you grateful to be a chiropractor? Why are you grateful to become a chiropractor? Like, what do you get to do? Who are you?
Yeah. You said so many things that I could touch on there. And, so, and first, just to say this first, because this is absolutely the first thing and the most important thing is chiropractic is definitely about patients. It's not about us. I know we live in an influencer society, but I don't think that I don't really if I really get down to the nitty gritty of it, I'm not an influencer, I'm a conduit, for the influencer. And that's just kind of getting a little bit maybe to the soul of the practice for me. Um, I feel most connected, most on purpose when I'm lost in the moment, present time consciousness, caring for and loving uh, a complete stranger. You know, I can get a little emotional about it because because people are suffering. I think that social media paints a picture where everybody's got this honky dory life and all that. But when you're down in the which is, by the way, I have to say, first of all, I'm a nobody in chiropractic. I got nothing to sell. You know, uh, I'm walking around tables, adjusting people all day. I've been doing that for 17 years. Okay. Um, which will bring me back to another point. But first of all, I just want to say that because I don't, because that's the truth. Because one of the things that generally within 30 minutes of having a conversation with a chiropractic uh, student or prospective chiropractor or a chiropractor, within 30 minutes they're talking about money, they're talking about other things that which all that stuff is great and it's important, and we talk about the equal exchange and stuff like that, which I have some pretty deep ideas and thoughts on all that I don't want to necessarily get into, but we certainly do need to make a living. um However, if money's always the thing, then money's like never enough. And so I know for me, and I think I fell into that actually for a while too. So I don't want to come across as I think I was a little too focused on that at different points in my career. Um, but I'll tell you, as soon as I quit, as soon as for me, and this is the way that things work for me, that as soon as I quit thinking about that stuff, the more of it I started kind of getting. The more I just thought, well, my mission and my purpose was never about those things. It's really about that connection with other human beings, which that's my favorite part of practice. Aside from, I also love, I'm always, trying to master my technique. Getting better and better and better. I feel like I'm getting better and better all the time. Um, I really enjoy that part of it. One of the major focuses, one of the things that I've been really loving a lot lately is not just the technique to help the patient, but how to deliver it. Because I'm 52 years old and I want to keep doing it. To some level. I want to continue to be able to do it. And so one of my focuses personally has been how should the chiropractors, so like one of my favorite things to do, and it's kind of just messing with people, is I'll see some folks, doing the Instagram videos and stuff. And I like to go in there and say, hey, if you keep, putting your hands like that, the way you're doing it, like I'll critique the video, you know, you're going to hurt yourself, or I'll make an explanation. I never get any feedback back. I don't think they appreciate it, but it's kind of like, if you keep putting your hands in that position and you do that for 15 years, you're going to hurt yourself. Um, so I've been focusing a lot on that, like how the chiropractor should be positioned himself, or how the chiropractor or he or she should be delivering the force. Um, and I've been kind of a lot into that. So, but the thing that gets me all the time, every single time, all day long, is you know when a patient, it never gets old. A patient that can't walk in, walks out, and in a couple of days brings his wife. Never gets old. I mean, like that just makes me want to cry almost every time, because that's the other thing too, is that I don't claim that I can fix people, or that I can make somebody walk or anything like that. So it's just like this constant awe of wow, is like I didn't do anything. I just found, the misalignment causing nerve pressure, adjust it. I believe if you do the right thing long enough, that things should happen. It doesn't always, but should. But I'm always kind of surprised at what does.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and then you touched on a couple things that I really wasn't going to comment on, but since you touched on it a little bit, and I hate saying this, but I rarely encourage people to become chiropractors. Rarely, very rarely, and um it's because I kind of alluded to it a second ago. To me, a chiropractor basically walks around tables all day. So I'll tell one of the things that I've had the ability to do is the last 3 years I've been able to train chiropractors, a lot of chiropractors, and it's one of the things that I'm like, hey, the job is walking around tables, listening to people, mostly listening, walking around tables, uh, and if you're not going to be into that, so kind of going back to what you were saying, I think one of the, um, you know, maybe I don't know. There's a lot of issues that so there's a lot of nuances as far as like what is chiropractic, that sort of thing. So if chiropractic is everything, then you don't really need to disqualify people from coming into the colleges. So um, but if chiropractic is one thing, and by my understanding of it, you know, you have to like, I remember, and I'll get into that. I thought I was going to graduate and basically just be bent over a table. Period. I just thought there'd be a line down the street, because who wouldn't want to get adjusted? I mean, that was just where I was coming from. Um, who wouldn't want to be adjusted? So, I was in a lot of denial and shock to find out that there's, a whole lot of other components to it that, had I known, I may not have become a chiropractor. So it's kind of ignorance is good sometimes, because
Mhm.
my background is, as far as professionally, I'm a carpenter. I grew up in construction, and I've always been artsy, kind of playing music, bass guitar, saxophone. I've been in bands, and so I'm a touchy feely, guy, and that's what I was like, yeah, and humping it, like, I go out there and dig ditches all day, that's what I was doing, or building a house, or, driving nails, So I thought that was it. It'd be no different. I'm the hammer, the patients would be the nails. It would just be like, that's what I thought the job was going to be, which I was okay with. And that's what I wanted, and then I found out that it doesn't work that way necessarily, not necessarily, but and then I became a chiropractor because, to be honest with you, I was living a very hedonistic, self-centered lifestyle, at one point prior to chiropractic, and you know really enjoyed it. And but I have a brother who got really, really, really sick. Okay, and this isn't a story about I adjusted him and he came to. It wasn't that. It wasn't like that at all. But he got really, really, really sick, and it got me very depressed. I was like really bummed out about it, And I had as a matter of fact, Dr. Dean Satilli, I have to give credit to pulling me into this game. He always told me, you'd be a great chiropractor. You'd be a great chiropractor. And so anyway, my brother got really sick at one point, um, and it just sent me kind of into a depression. And what that led me to was just basically kind of understanding that, there's people that get sick, and there's people that are suffering. And here I am, like, living life like it was just a party, and I just kind of um, felt a push towards maybe being a little less self-centered, being a little less hedonistic, and being involved in, helping humanity. And my brother was a big push in that. And in good chiropractic fashion, I called Dr. Dean Satilli, went out to dinner with him one night, and my butt was in a classroom in like 2 weeks, like that, before I could change my mind. He knew what he was doing. They know what they're doing. They're like, let's get you on that plane. Let's get you up to Life University. Let's get you up to Sherman, you know.
Mhm.
And that's really kind of how I got into it. And of course, I had been a chiropractic patient beforehand. I do have my own sort of. I have a spondylo, which I remember when I was a teenager, and I had hurt my back, but I didn't hurt it. I mean, I hurt it, and and something was, but it didn't hurt me until a few years later, and I became extremely, crippled, over it. At like, I was 24 years old, and somebody told me about chiropractic even before I met Dean Satilli. So I started getting adjusted, and I was a patient. I had a very simple explanation of what chiropractic was. I started getting, manual adjustments, started getting better, and I've been getting adjusted ever since.
Mm.
Almost on a weekly basis.
Mhm.
Um, uh, doing
That's
it
a
as a
perfect segue. If I could
yeah,
interject for a moment,
yes,
basically,
please.
I like how you're bouncing around. You're touching on a lot of different things that
Hmm.
are lighting up little ideas, and you touched on how to position yourself to have a more sustainable path of life as a chiropractor, because
Hmm.
you said you're walking around tables, but you're walking around tables with people on them, and those people are what makes the experience more dynamic and fruitful and exciting and
Hmm.
just real, like raw and authentic. So I
Hmm.
appreciate you just kind of simplifying it down to I'm just walking around tables. But if we're being really real about it, it's the people that are on those tables that we're really focused on, not the tables.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
the people that give us those stories,
Hmm.
not only of the chiropractic stories, but also just of the life stories that they're bringing
Hmm.
with them. And all of that is what I think makes this such an attractive path. I don't think that we should be pushing people to chiropractic necessarily. And I think that's what you mean when you say, I very rarely tell people they should become chiropractors. But I do
Hmm.
think that we need to represent as loudly as we can what it is in a true, authentic way so that those who
Hmm.
do recognize what it is can be called to come this way. I don't think
Hmm.
that it's really represented, there's no presence of it. And that's what I'm trying to establish. I'm not trying to say everybody should be a chiropractor. To be honest with you, after hearing conversations like this, if people decide, hey, I'm not really down, I'm not really trying
Right.
to go that way, that's fine. I prefer
Agreed.
that.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to just kind of get in. You said you met Dean Satilli. Obviously, he's heavily involved or has been in the past heavily involved. Like, how did you meet him? What was it that he gave you in that experience that gave you that yes and you went? And then also
Hmm.
just talk about that life experience in school. Like, who were you attracted to? Who were your mentors?
Hmm.
Was Dr. Sid still available for you to like really like be under his wing, or like how did
Hmm.
you immerse yourself in chiropractic? Walk us through the experience.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I think everybody is kind of under Dr. Sid's wing, But I graduated Sherman College. Um, I've known Dean for a long time. He and I was his best man at his wedding, so we've been friends for a very, very long time. And that's kind of that's just kind of that. Uh, but I was probably first of all, I'm one of these people like actually Dean said this to me. Now that I think about it, he says the people that usually get it become chiropractors, which was my story. Is like it was explained to me. It seemed so easy, so simple. I still can't believe how complicated it gets, to be honest with you. And maybe you know maybe just a simpleton. I don't know, but it never seemed to be that complicated to me, what chiropractic is and how it works. And but having said that, so I was probably very influenced by reading the Strauss Blue books. I love that. I love Reggie Gold. As a matter of fact, the spine in my office that I have right now, that's 20 years old now from school, is Reggie. That's the name of my school spine. That's still in my office. Um, so definitely I would absolutely consider myself to be the objective straight chiropractor, whatever. I don't know if that has negative connotation, I don't know, but I'm very, very, very good at what I do, very on point. But yeah, so those are my influences. I had become super. I was introduced to I had become a gondroid of sorts, but had a real knack in BGI, which was just a surprise to me and everybody else. I went to a BGI seminar, and the next Monday I was president of the club. It was kind of weird. Um, but so I do, I understand and I get into both sides of the mechanistic versus the more vitalistic approaches. I do. Anyway, I guess a side note, but I explain chiropractic very vitalistic to patients. I don't try to get them into church, necessarily. I let them get there on their own if they get there. A lot of them are already there, um, but anyway, yeah. So those are my main influences, and of course, when I said like Dr. Sid, Dean was heavily influenced by his own father, and who was a DE chiropractor, DE speaker, and I went to some DEs early on before I even knew what it was, um, and I remember hearing DE speakers and Dean's dad, um, and I still, if I go to a seminar, it's going to be DE. I don't usually traverse the country going different places. I just go to the source, because it all kind of started there.
Hmm.
So and that's heavily influenced me and continues to. When patients come in and ask me how I'm doing, I say near perfect. Without even batting an eye.
Hmm.
Near
Can you
perfect.
break down some of the basic explanation that you give to a person that comes in about chiropractic? Because obviously, I'm trying to have you represent an example of a chiropractor who's on message, on purpose, in life and in practice. Can you kind of just give us how you would talk to a person that's coming into your practice about chiropractic?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that kind of actually brings us kind of to what you've been kind of talking about, which is really key as far as like one of the things that I get to see it as students come out of school, because again, the last 3 years I've gotten to train a lot of chiropractors, whether they've been in practice a long time, but so many are just fresh out of school or have come out of school. And it's like it's almost like they've learned nothing to like help them in the experience, in practice. And I think that's one of the shames for me is like, wow, imagine if you'd spent the last 3.5 years, training, because that's what it takes. It takes training, you know. It took me a long time. I was not this way for a long, long time, but I'm very, very trained up now, and I didn't used to be. And what's funny is that a lot of folks don't like that, and a lot of but even Dr. Sid used to talk about get down your training, training, training. In one hand, the other hand is the love hand or the service hand. And it just took me a long time to understand that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I do is I can take someone who and that's the point. They come out of school, they have absolutely no idea how to talk to a human being. They have absolutely no idea how to interact with one. They have no idea about office procedures. Um, and not to sound salesy, because it's not for me. I'm not selling, because I'm only trying to offer what I think chiropractic is. I'm not saying, hey, if you want this, we'll sell you that. If you want that, we'll sell you this. No, I'm trying to influence somebody to just come down to, what I think chiropractic is, which is getting adjusted basically on a weekly basis, or getting checked. I don't want to, like I tell my patients, is like, it's like you may get the same things adjusted several weeks in a row. One week it might be something different. One week you may not get adjusted, but it's like, but getting checked every week. This is my, boom. But essentially, number one, and I don't know, I guess I don't know, like when patient, I'm trying to like, so if I was a student, what to expect. I mean, like, number one, like over the last couple of years, to be honest with you, the general public has been a little bit irritated. So you're not you're dealing with people that are stressed out. It's another thing. Is like when you're messing around at school, you're kind of both in, yeah, yeah, but so a lot of times you're dealing with people that are what's the right word? Nobody wants to go to the doctor, which is funny, because it's like you're not a real doctor, but people don't want to go to the doctor, and you are a doctor, and so it's, and depending on where you are. So like, around where I live, you can get a certain attitude where it's like, well, that damn doctor, is trying to charge you $2,000, or whatever. So it's like, so you become that damn doctor. So that's number one. It's like one of those things. The general public, when they're hurting and they're stressed and they got financial issues, and COVID for the last couple of years been whacking people left and right. For 2 years, they're burnt, they're tired, they're stressed, and they're subluxated, right? And so that's kind of like the number one thing is, don't fall into the trap that everybody loves you, that everybody can't wait to see you. And I do know that there's some positive affirmations. Like, yes, you can give yourself those they're coming from the north, the south, the east, and the west. Everybody's coming to the chiropractor who's best, whatever. I just made that one up on the last part, but
Hmm.
so yeah, you got to be more fire than their water. That's something Dean Cecily taught me. It's like, so know your philosophy, know your technique, know that you be confident in it, but don't expect warm receptions all the time. So that's like, so that's number one. So number one, how do you deal with somebody who's a little bit maybe hostile, even, or are you even, so like, are you missing red flags and just trying to force them down that thing anyway? So that's, and I say that, but that's actually, that is the literally, the number one thing I'm looking for when a patient walks into the office. And I'm in a situation where most of my new patients are not referrals, so they're not getting the heads up necessarily. We do get tons of referrals, but a lot of them are walk-ins, people straight off the street. um, and so number one is like, are there any red flags? um, are they courteous? Are they nice to the staff? Are they happily filling out paperwork? Are they complaining about filling out paperwork? Are they asking a lot of questions about how much it costs? These are all red flags that initially, when I was a student, I wasn't even aware of those things. And even in in my troubles in practice, you know, I think that chiropractors have the tendency to react. We get reactionary and we get defensive, and then we still try to stuff somebody. I mean, and just because this just innate drop this in, you know, for me, the last 2 years watching chiropractors come down on the general public has been disgusting to me. Like, you know, just calling them sheep and getting their vaccine. I don't understand. That to me doesn't sit well, you know, because I'm supposed to be taking care of these people, you know. So
Mhm.
anyway, that just kind of came to me. So that's the
Mhm.
main thing is like, you know, when they're coming in and if they are, you know, one of the sheeple, you know, how am I treating them? You know, it is a red flag. How am I keeping them in my, you know, funnel? You know, how's this patient going to convert? You know,
Mhm.
well, it's not by making them wrong. You know, and it's also not by ignoring those things. So, you know, I train a lot on like, you know, if somebody doesn't want to fill out paperwork, how do you deal with that? You know, how do you talk to them? You know, how do you explain those things, you know? So but anyway, it's all just, you know, procedural, you know, scripted. I train a lot with my staff. um, you know, I trained so much with my staff that it turned into me training doctors over 11 clinics. So you know, because I'm just big, because a lot you just don't know. And again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I'm like, wow, it's like 3.5 years of school, and it's like, oh, you know. I remember I had an
Mhm.
intern in my office several years ago, and I had two things happen in one day. First of all, it's only happened one time. A patient fell off the table. One time. Okay. I asked this woman to roll over. If Steve Judson gets to listen to this, it was Steve Judson's patient. He referred to me from Connecticut. I'll never forget it. I said, roll over, and she literally rolled off. She just, you know, boom. And, you know, since then, I'm touching the patient the entire time they're on the table. So there's another little, you know, nugget. You know, always be right there touching them, be the bed rail, touch them, you know, um, let them know they're secure and so they don't fall. But anyway, in the same day, so I had an intern at the time. My wife was working the front desk, and either before or after that, another patient smacked into another patient in the parking lot. And I remember looking at the intern and going, "They don't teach you any of this in school, right? You know how to deal with this, you know." And you know, so that's just kind of like that. That's kind of like what I'm talking about is that, you know, and doctors that have been practicing for a long time, they could tell you, man, your time would be so much better spent if at least half the time in school was just training and, you know, learning how to respond instead of react to all these different scenarios, you know. Kids crying, mad, you know, mad husbands who, you know, are there because the wife pushed them there. I mean, I could go on all day. You know, it's like, you know, they're slow or they're old or, you know, whatever. Okay, you know, what are the different, and you know, and there are ways to just really program yourself to know how to respond to those things. So
Mhm.
um yeah, and that just goes on through. But you know, when I meet a patient, you know, number one, you know, I try to determine if they're hostile. You know, if they're hostile towards me, you can't pull somebody. You know, you talk about leading horses to water. I mean, you can't pull a hostile patient to chiropractic. You know, so are they hostile? Are they hostile to me? Can that be? Can I, you know, can I bring them over to where I want them to be? You know, so Joe, I see you're kind of mad. You know, are you mad at me? He's like, well, you know, I don't want to be here. You know, okay, well, you know, don't continue on with the consultation like that. You know, you have to confront that. So I think another thing is I say confront, but not confrontation. You know, don't ignore it. Don't think that that person's going to become a good patient. You know, you got to, you know, that's actually one of the patients that if you adjust them a little too hard, they might let you know. You know, hey, that was too hard. I didn't like that. You know, da 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 da. So it's like, so you know, so Joe, you know, are you mad at me? No, I just, you know, I don't want to be here. Oh, why are you here? You know, well, my wife, you know, forced me to be here. That's when you put down the paperwork and the clipboard. You say, Joe, you know, I'm really sorry your wife forced you to be here. You know, I am just, you know, trying to help you. How about you just go along with me over the next few minutes? You know, I'll try to help you out. It'll make your wife happy. We'll get you out of here. You know, how does that sound? You know, so some kind of, you know, a patient looks at their watch. You know, are you in a rush? I stop them. I go, hey, are you in a rush? Oh my God. I had a woman recently. Oh my God, that is so rude, isn't it? Yeah, well, it kind of was. Yeah. But, you know, it's looking for those, you know, are they taking you seriously? Do they take chiropractors seriously? Do they just think it's a, you know, one and done, rack and crack, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know, they'll come in with a certain perception of what they're looking for. And then it's your job to convert that patient, you know, to the best of you can as you can to a lifelong, once a week, you know, real deal chiropractic patient, you know.
Mhm.
That's my opinion. I take that very seriously, and I do that because there are three things that really matter to me. One is my reputation. Two is that the patient gets better, results. And the other is that, I want to be able to have patients that have a more positive opinion of chiropractic and chiropractors. I want them to, once they go through an experience with me, their friend might say, "Oh, those quacks." And they'll say, "Yeah, well, they might be, but, Dr. René down the street, help my wife, that sort of thing."
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so, in order to do that, to guarantee those three things, it's very, very important that I do my absolute utter best to convert a patient and get them under chiropractic care, for at least 6 months. If I can't do better than that, but I'm always trying to, anything less than that is just not really trying chiropractic. It's not experiencing chiropractic. So
Mhm. Mhm.
but anyway, there's talking about school again and just all that. I would train, train, train. As a matter, I have there's two. I train chiropractors profession, in my office as part of our network of clinics. But there's two doctors that I think are worth it for a student to look up, and they got two great programs in my opinion. One is Dr. Rick Franks. If you just look him up, I think he has something called 52 weeks to practice success or something like that. It's an all online program. It costs whatever it costs a month. It is a coaching thing, but it is seriously all about training, all about learning how to deal with objections, this sort of thing. And another guy that I actually, and this is another thing, is I'm a big advocate and always learning. So I actually signed up myself last year for a couple of months. I took Tim Young's course. He's on Facebook and he's doing huge things. We're in different situations. We practice very, very basically. That's the thing, is like you'll see like the guy. I've learned that the guys that I really admire are doing the same things. They might have little differences. Like I know Tim Young may have some insurance going and some X-rays, which I don't do. But the procedures, the speed, that sort of thing, the scripting, that sort of thing. I think if I was a student, I would tap into, those are two good resources. I think the DE stuff or those seminars, whether it's, Mile High, I've never been to Mile High, that's on my bucket list. I think that's more for, developing your spiritual nature if you don't already have it, um,
Mhm.
to the how you should be, when you are, so filling up that left hand or the right hand, whichever it is, like probably the left hand, filling up that left hand, and then that other stuff fills up the right hand. um
Mhm.
and you're not going to be swinging it out of the park until you've kind of combined both of them, and you got them both down, which Dr. Sid talks about in a couple of his books, like just being really so trained up. And as a matter of fact, as a practicing chiropractor, when I first started to really, it's just talking about discipline. When I started really trying to really discipline myself and really start training up myself, I didn't have immediate results for a long time because all that stuff was kind of foreign, for me. But eventually it became second nature. It became hardwired. It was integrated. I didn't have to think about what I was saying. And, so now I can, flow, and I flow hardcore, no
Mhm.
problem. And I think that's, that's but yeah, when I talk to patients themselves, I'm very mechanistic. I explain, and first thing I do is I listen. First I listen to them, you know, um, and I do guide them. I mean, we're not going to talk about football and we're not going to talk about politics. If they start going that way, one of the mistakes that chiropractors make, and young chiropractors, they try to be. Man, I heard a quote the other day that I absolutely loved. Um, if you want them, if you're something about like quit spending your time, trying to make them like you, shut the heck up and make them love you. I mean, like that, I can't say that enough. I mean, like that's just like, and I used to be that way, personality driven. I want you to like me. That dude's cool. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love, yeah, he's a great adjuster and he's cool and all that. I don't want none of that. I don't want any of that. I want you to come get adjusted because you're getting results and you want to be adjusted. So I've actually really the last couple of years, I try to have even worse bedside manner, not like mean or cruel, but just like, again, how you doing, doc? Near perfect. Good to see you. I don't ask them how they're doing back necessarily. I'm not trying to get into a, likey kind of thing. It hurts here. Okay. I'm not going to do a whole exam again and no PQRST. I'm going to acknowledge them. I hear you. I'm going to put my hand on it, and then I'm going to adjust them. Deliver the goods. If you can't deliver the goods, you can't really practice that way. So it's kind of like they need to be able to come off the table and reaffirm the idea that they didn't have to tell me anything because I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff like that. So, but anyway, in a
Mm-hmm.
consultation, I'm going to listen to patients. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I let them know this is the longest visit. You know, I set up the expectations of everything in the office. I explain what we're going to do, and I do that before I do an examination. You know, I think, aha, yeah, we found this and this is that. I think that's because I like to, again, I just, every corner, if they say something to me in a conversation, like I think it's a sprain strain or I think it's a muscle, and I look at them and I go, well, if it is, I won't be able to help you. I mean, I take every single opportunity to like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll explain that in a second. And then when I get to explaining what I'm going to do, it's something very specific. And if you have it, then I can help you. And if you don't have it, I'll send you somewhere else. And that's, that's one of the ways that I present it. But I do very mechanistically. I grab that spine when we get to that point, and I just say, we look for misaligned vertebra. Um, we check through the spinal column, the SI joints, the hips. We look at the occiput or the skull. You know, I believe everybody gets these. I always say, in my opinion, because it's my opinion. I don't like try to stack research books up on people or philosophy books. By now I just look at it, it's kind of like I've been doing this a long time. So in my opinion, this happens to everybody. And if you think that's a crazy statement, everybody gets plaque on their teeth. And this is why we brush our teeth every single day. These misalignments, if they are minor and if they haven't been around very long, your body can actually self-correct those. Just like if I take and I give you a paper cut, what do you have to do? Nothing, right? Your body will heal it up. So your body can correct these, and it uses the muscles. It's a bunch of muscles running all up and down here to do those corrections. But what does happen is that these misalignments can get very, very stuck. When that happens, it affects the biomechanics of the joint. That starts to create irritation, inflammation. It starts to degenerate all the components in this area, like the discs, in between the vertebra, damages the ligaments that connect vertebra to vertebra, and all that inflammation can put pressure on the nerves. Some version of that. So what a chiropractor does is we're looking for those. When we find them, we're putting a force into the joint. I turn the spine around with a little misalignment, and I say, I'm not a surgeon. I'm not trying to get you out of pain, but I am trying to be as specific as possible. In other words, you don't want one of these, TikTok experiences where maybe somebody racks and cracks you and goes this way, right? And they're like, no, no, no. And it's like, no, we want to go that way. And so we'll try to be very specific. And but and then I explained that it's a process. I'm a little bit more like a orthodontist. It takes time to get this worked out. It's not a one and done. It's not like getting a wart at the removed off your arm at the dermatologist's office. And then I explained it. So what I need to do now is find out if you have these, and if you do have them, then I can help you out. And if you don't have them, then I'll send you somewhere else, or I'll I'll let you know that too.
Mm.
Okay. And then it's like, okay, now let's go on to the examination. Then I can determine, yes, you have them, or hey, I think you got a broken rib, you need to be somewhere else. Hey, whatever, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Again, I'm always trying to like, and I've always kind of been that way when people are like, I got headaches and I know it's just my neck, and it's like, well, slow down now, because you could have a tumor, you know. So let's figure out, you know, if you in fact are subluxated, because again, I'm always trying to nail the point home that I'm just doing one thing. I'm looking for one thing. I'm single purpose, single minded, that sort of thing. And then that's it. Then and then after I do my exams, I ask them if they want to be helped. Do you want me to help you? Because again, you can't pull a horse. So I ask permission. Would you like my help? Would you like me to help you? Because I've had guys say, I remember one consult where the guy was like, I asked him, do you get headaches? And he was like, well, only when I go to the doctors. So, you're not going to just sign that guy up, right? So it's like, I do my exam with him. All right, Joe, do you want me to help you? And he was just like, Joe, would you like me to help you? Well, I guess so. Okay, Joe, great. And then I can explain, the procedures in the office, how long they're going to be there, how much it's going to cost. I do all that stuff. I do all of it. And then
Mhm.
give them the first adjustment, give them the expectations. One thing that even students that are practicing out there on everybody, the one thing they can be doing is telling people that they may get sore, after their adjustments. I always let them know you may get sore your first few visits. That's not something you can go back on. Once a patient comes back and says, man, that adjustment got me really sore, you can't say, oh yeah, that might happen. Mm-mm. I adjust them. I bring them up. Listen, You may get sore your first few visits, okay? And then I reiterate, you need to be here 3 times a week for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Any questions? That sort of thing. And that's it. And it's just like, and I mean, that's like, we'll do 100 patients a month. And, so I'm just a robot at work. One of my other favorite chiropractors, Dr. Awais Butts, he's phenomenal. He's a good guy. You could have him. I understand him more and more through the years because he used to just say to me, I'm just a grunt. I'm just a grunt. I'm a broken record. That's it. And that's what, that's to me, that's the job. It's like, it's training, it's discipline, it's, not getting caught off guard. It's meeting with the staff in the morning, setting up the goals for the day. It's very, it's a bit more, I think, for me, especially if you're trying to see more than 20 people a day, so it's one of those things where, like, I tell folks, it's like chiropractic is super, super fun, if you're practicing chiropractic. But if you're trying to do 100 psychological evaluations or, 50 stretch sessions, or 49, nutritional, conversations, at the end of an 80, 90, 100 visit day, you're going to be wiped out and very tired. And no amount of money's, worth that. So anyway, I don't know if that made sense. And I'm just kind of
I really, no,
running
I mean,
stuff
you
off.
just gave a 23-minute response, but I really appreciate you going deep and sharing all the details, teasing. These conversations are really just to get people in their element, get them flowing, and you were just flowing. So I didn't want to interrupt, and at the same time, I'm listening,
Hmm.
I'm soaking it up. I appreciate you sharing the wisdom. At the end of the day, the more we can share these messages that you just shared, it like helps
Hmm.
orient students to like, okay, how am I allocating my time when I get to chiropractic school?
Hmm.
Okay, I'm clearly going to need to watch this interview a couple of times, or we're going to break it down so that people can know what they need to be training on as far as communication goes. So just to
Hmm.
let you know a little bit about the details of how I'm structuring the approach to becoming a chiropractor. Stage one is like, what is chiropractic? Why do people become chiropractors? Like, listening to pre-Chiro stories of why people followed this path, and kind of what the motivating factors were, and what is chiropractic, what isn't it. And then stage two is like, what does the training look like, what types of skills. And I broke innate up into inner state, and state is an acronym, so it's like you're developing your inner scientist, your inner thinker, your inner artist, your inner teacher, your inner entrepreneur. And
Hmm.
so much of what you just mentioned right there is like skill building. And also stage three is going and experiencing chiropractic as deeply as possible, so not only getting
Hmm.
care but making observations that are structured to help you learn specific things every time you enter an office. So you just mentioned a lot of the details of what goes on in your practice, and that is going to help feed students in that third stage to experience it. And then stage four is a little more innovative. It's urging students at that pre-Chiro stage four to start their own pre-Chiro club, or start some sort of venture where they're stepping out representing chiropractic on their college campus, and
Hmm.
what that feels like for them, and
Hmm.
engaging in voluntary discomfort. Stage five is the capstone independent study.
Hmm.
Stage six
I
is
love
the
that.
admissions process. Stage five is the capstone. I find, I'm definitely interested in you giving some marching orders to a student who wants to spend 3 months doing something that's going to bring a lot of value to them, and help them enter chiropractic school with a clarity, a purpose, a deep confidence that they're making the right decision for themselves.
Hmm.
Stage six is the admissions process, so highlighting the 11 to 14 vitalistic slash mechanistic schools that exist in the world, where
Hmm.
you can actually go study chiropractic. And then stage
Hmm.
seven is the Chiro student experience. How do you orient and allocate time to your training? And then stage eight is the student Chiro. So now you're in the clinic. How do you start to prepare and plan your practice for the future while you're in clinic? And then stage nine is like transitioning to the real world. All of that goes into starting your own practice and getting
Yeah.
support from people on how to start your own practice. And then
Hmm.
stage 10 is like professional engagement, continued growth, getting to a place where you know who you are, you know what you do, you know why you do it, you're happy with where you're at, and you're now choosing to give
Hmm.
back, or You're choosing to do different things. So, posing new
Hmm.
questions, like, anyway, just giving you that full breadth.
Yeah.
And if I believe if every student goes into school with that big picture, that
Hmm.
it will bring ease to their path. So,
Yeah, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. You had mentioned, how I spent time in school, and it was, technique, learning how to adjust. You got to deliver the goods because what you said something that just triggered this where, I guess as far as like if people want to have like a super, I mean, unique job that I feel like my life is just basically like a fairy tale, basically. It's just
mhm.
like, if you want to have that kind of like an inflow kind of life that is just super unique, and helping people in a very, very unique way, um, that's what you can expect with like chiropractic. It's a very, very, very cool gig. I mean, like, um, and of course, it just goes back to, that it's about the patients. So like, when you adjust a patient, I adjusted a lady. I'll never forget it because I adjusted her. I left, and she was like, "Hey, dog, I want to tell you something." And I was like, "Okay," and just kind of busy. He's like, "No, no, seriously," and she just lifts up there. She said, "You've saved my life, and I really want you to know that." And like you go home like, you know awestruck, or you start up I started up, patients that, a girl, her daddy was a chiropractor, um, other people have chiropractic in their family, I started up Dee Dee Umber's niece one day, just out of the blue. Another guy who had been a patient of Dr. Sid's, another guy who was one of Dr. Sid's security guards, and it's just like magic. It's just like where the whole family starts coming in, and then you see them out and about in town, and they go on and on telling your wife about how much they love your, we love your husband. It's a, it's beautiful life, absolutely beautiful life.
And I'm just curious what your thoughts or perspective is on this idea that if you get ignited spiritually within, that spirit never gets tired, it never fatigues, it never gets exhausted. You rely, not rely, but you trust in that spirit to really help you have the strength to do the type of stuff that you're talking about that you're able to do, which is beyond people's intellectual possibility of what's possible, how many people you could take care of, how many people you could reach, the amount of connection you can have to the community that you live in, and how that's going to continue to ripple out when you're gone, in ways that we as chiropractors have no idea of, right? And that all starts from within.
That's so powerful because like that's what depending on the personality type, you can have like students or chiropractors that are real mechanistically minded, or they got the entrepreneurial side down. They're very right-handed, and you got people doing the left hand. But I think one of the things that I've seen through the years is how many left-handed people, big time givers, lovers, miracle workers, that don't have enough in the right hand, and that gets snuffed out. So that spirit is there and it's ignited, but it's almost like the subluxation. If you have something interfering with that, that's allowing that expression. And it's a lot of stuff that on the surface we would reject, or don't like necessarily, but it's actually the thing that allows that to flow and allows that spirit to flow on a super high level. And so, like, if you want to touch a lot of people, you got to know how to not get defensive. You got to know how to not be reactionary. You got to know how to answer a question philosophically in a sound philosophical way that um, acknowledges the patient, manages the risk, manages the experience, and but that's what allows this to keep, and that's what I've experienced the last few years. This keeps getting bigger and big. It's just like huge, and it's actually the discipline. It's all the heavy-handed right hand stuff, the discipline and the training that really, it's like like you mentioned fire. So that's what's like it's just not adding water to it. When you're lacking there, you're just adding water there. And one thing that I would be remiss if I didn't touch on, because I think that and I know you're working on the student experience side. So I mean, one of the things that I would say is, I am a clinic director at a joint in Dawsonville, Georgia, which is like one of the most beautiful places in the world, taking care of most beautiful people. And One of the things that I've gotten to see, because I was in private practice for 14 and a half years, and I've been with the Joint now 3 years. And one of the things that I've gotten to see is, because one of the problems, and I think one of the expectations that I think students should understand is that the demand is not there for subluxation correction. It is, but it's not. It's not in the way that it's like there for a dentist. A kid can get out of school and is going to make 120,000 right off the rip, going and working for somebody else. As a dentist, even as a veterinarian. I've got a couple of vets and vet office managers that they're telling me the other day they have to pay a student. They got to pay when they come out 120,000 just to get them, just to get them. So one of the things that I love about the Joint is that it is working on that side of things, increasing the demand for straight chiropractic, for our for our brand of chiropractic. The Joint uses subluxation terminology in its training. It is straight chiropractic, no modalities, that sort of thing. And would say, if you're a student without means or without a good plan or that sort of thing, getting in at a Joint is, I take students that knew nothing. I mean, jack nothing. And I'm watching my language, literally knew nothing. And in a year, they give 1,000 consultations, they put their hands on, I mean, I don't know how many, 1,000, visits, 1,000 consultations, 1,000, just, and they start to get that idea because, if me and you because there's that other half of the equation, there's the field is white with the harvest, but where are the laborers? I can tell you, being on the Joint side of things, I mean, there are 750 joints, and they're not stopping. Okay, and because they have that right hand. It's not a chiropractor running the marketing department necessarily. I don't think, or there might be some input, but they have professionals. It's been an argument of mine for the last few years where it's like, we need not just chiropractors. You need other people that do that other right-handed stuff. So it's where I don't think a lot of folks understand that the Joint is driving 100 new patients to every single a majority of the Joint locations that there are. People are being introduced to chiropractic. So, and of course, then, so this is kind of like from my perspective, it's like one of the things that's happening is that just because that's happening doesn't mean that practice is growing. Okay. Because the students aren't coming out trained. They don't know, how to take that person and bring them into chiropractic, because they have one of the issues, in whether it's in the schooling or whatever, and in the Joint model, it's very, very bad. It's very, very bad to be Liam Schubel, he came up with the term professional schizophrenia, which I love. I mean, it just explains everything. It's like a lot of students don't know what they're doing. They don't know if what they are, and then you get thrown into a Joint model. I mean, could you imagine like not really knowing what you do or what you are, and then next thing you know, you're practicing in Reggie Gold's office? I mean, it's like, it would be a nightmare. It'd be a horrible place, to be, because you're just not prepared at all in any way for that environment, for that experience. So one of the things that's happening that I'm seeing is like the Joint is increasing the demand. The number of clinics never stops opening. The number of visits never stops going up. So, I'm in a network of 11, so we talk about, we want everybody under chiropractic care. I'm honored to be in a network of 11 that are doing 3,000-4,000 visits a week. So it's like, that's a lot of people getting under chiropractic, but is the chiropractor that's there providing the service a chiropractor? Are they providing, the service? But it's also good training. And I would tell anybody if they didn't have a plan or, the right money to open up or that sort of thing, because I do think you want to open up the right way. It's not a bad idea to get into a Joint for a year or two, because that's how that's how you want it to be. If you're a straight chiropractor, that's the model, and
Can you
something else
talk a
that I
little
have to say
bit?
about that too. Yeah.
Huh? Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was surprised. One of the big surprises for me, especially early on, and as I would get, these doctors that would come in that I would train, is to hear their stories about like what they're going through, and I have to say, you can make more money at the Joint than you can at a lot of these, family chiropractic offices that don't like the Joint, so so if they're not, providing the opportunity, for a young doc who doesn't have the right hand put together, because that can't be, they have the heart, they got the left hand, that sort of thing. But you were going to say something, so I do want to answer whatever you were going to ask.
Well, I mean, this is becoming more nonlinear in this question, but I'm just curious if you can give some sort of response to this prompt. So let's just say the joint has 750 offices. They're bringing in many, many millions of dollars. It's a corporation. It's run like a corporation. It's growing rapidly. What if the joint invested, because this has been one of my things recently. We don't have enough. People ask me, like, okay, the message you just share is very on message with chiropractic, what it is. And yet somebody could hear that and be like, well, I got my neck adjusted, my headache went away, I don't need to go anymore. It like went in one ear and out the other. And I'm like, it's not about that one to one. It's about that, like, you just mentioned the marketing department is not run by chiropractors, yet you're obviously a chiropractor, you're in the company, so you can influence these marketers. They
100%.
have the budget. Can we create commercials that specifically do an amazing job? Because one commercial could cost $1 million.
Hmm.
One
Yes.
minute commercial costs $1 million. So it's like somebody like me to raise $1 million for a 1 minute commercial is pretty difficult. What I'm thinking of right now is raising
Hmm.
30,000 to do a smaller budget commercial, but to have it
Hmm.
still be like legit professionally done. And I would
Hmm.
love there to be commercials for kids to learn about chiropractic, commercial for a high school student or a college student or an HBCU, historically black college, like different commercials on like who chiropractors are and why you might want to become a chiropractor. Not why you might want
Hmm.
to go to a chiropractor, but why you
Hmm.
might want to become. And anyway, my point is
Yeah,
like,
love it. Yeah.
can we reach a tipping point in society where places like the joint have directed their energy, right? Because it's like, if we're trying to connect innate to innate with somebody else on our table, we're not only trying to connect, but we're also trying to connect and then direct innate to help
Hmm.
that person heal. And basically, I believe the joint has connected on an innate level with chiropractic as a profession,
Hmm.
but is it directing innate to fulfill its potential? So our profession obviously not reaching its potential. There's subluxations everywhere. My premise is that the primary subluxation in the profession is the pre-Chiro students have never been talked about, thought about, focused on, and cultivated, so that no matter what school they go to, they're clear on what chiropractic is, they're clear on why they're becoming a chiropractor, and they're motivated to train themselves to be the best chiropractor they could be. That's, to me, the primary
Hmm.
subluxation that we're trying to address here in these conversations and put together and
Hmm.
package. But I don't have a budget like the joint. You're connected to the joint. There's this
Hmm.
concept called intrapreneurship, where you get into a corporation and
Hmm.
you inspire it from within to
Hmm.
shift its focus. So I'm just
Hmm.
curious, are these conversations happening? Are you invited to these conversations? Are you sitting at the table? What's the deal? Like, the joint is very powerful right now.
Yeah, at certain levels I am, and I do influence, my environment and where I'm able to go and do. um you know and I can talk the two sides of this, and I hear what you're saying. On the one side, yes, the joint, you know and this is kind of, I want a little nuance, but in my chiropractic mind, like, do I want to see like a joint subluxation commercial? Yes, I do. but but on the other side of it, it's kind of like, or are they doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing to get people to the door, right? And so they are getting people to the door, um so but I do would love to see that direction keep evolving. And I'm going to tell you something. This is very, I don't, people are going to watch this, and I don't, when I first of all, I never thought I never thought I would work at a joint, never, because I never worked for anybody in my life, never. And so that was the very first interview I ever had. And but anyway, it worked out very well for me. And there's a lot of, and that's another conversation, but it just like fit into what my life was doing. And I have other things going on, that, and family and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, when I got, the joint does this kind of training module, and you sign in, and they have like all this training, and it's a online, kind of thing that you go through. And I mean, and I remember sitting there at the table and like doing the online module training, and guess what word I saw? Subluxation. So, and I mean, I almost started crying because you talk about like the corporate thing. I was like, here is a corporate environment that embraces the subluxation concept, the core value of chiropractic. Okay. And I mean, I was freaking almost crying. I mean, I was just like, I just never thought I would see it. You know, in my life, I never thought I would see that. So I think, like, as you know, it's a process. You know, it's a journey. Last year, a year before, I had a nursing student on my table. I was adjusting, and then she like told me, "Hey, doc, you know, we just did a test, and it was a case history thing, and then you have to pick an answer. And one of the answers was chiropractic, and I was like, wow, you know, and that was at a university, right? So we're all in this for the long haul. You know, my friend Brian Lieberman likes to talk about, you know, maybe it's the 20 lifetimes. If it takes me 20 lifetimes, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'll try. I try everything I can to kind of influence that direction. And one of those things that I get to do is that, you know, when I get to train these docs and talk to these docs, and a lot of them, you know, they think I'm an idiot. They do. They think I'm a fool. You know, talking about innate, talking about, and these are, you know, already employed, you know, at the joint. And you know, the beautiful thing, again, a little more right hand thing, is that you can't do anything else, you know, at the joint and keep a job there. You know, you pull out a vibra cursor or you start doing too much, you're not going to work there. So that's kind of interesting. Sounds like, you know, working at Steve Judson's office, you know, is like, you know, you're not going to do too much. You're not going to go, you know, too far off on your own ideas before you just lose your job, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I do try to influence those conversations with those doctors. You know, it's like, uh, a lot of the DE message, you know, a lot of, as far as the heart, you know, the heart part. And, you know, and I think that the chiropractic side is, you know, simpler than that to understand. Um, and that just kind of is segueing in the other side of it, which is like, you know, yeah, I mean, we're kind of, you know, in a situation where, okay, you know, maybe the joint corporate is bringing in people with a message that we don't love, you know, like, you know, don't do pain, I think is one of the latest, you know, marketing slogans, which, you know, we don't love. We'd prefer, hey, be more than you are or something, you know. Um, but, you know, all these people are going to all these locations. So like what message are they getting once they get there and they reach, you know, the chiropractor there or the staff there? And one of the things that I can tell you, because I am privy to these kinds of things, is like that conversion number. So, you know, is a very leaky bucket. You know, there are a lot of people that are being driven to the doors, and it's not because of the model, you know. You know, it is absolutely not because of the model. You know, I can train a student that's going to convert 3 out of 10 people, and in 6 months they're going to convert 6 out of 6, 7 out of 10 people. And we're not talking about referrals. We're talking about like people straight off the street. You know, people come to the joint on dates. You know, what are you doing here today? Well, we're just out on a date. All right, man. Good luck converting that patient, you know, to lifetime chiropractic care, or a monthly commitment, you know, to chiropractic care. You know, they're out tonight on a date, you know, but it can be done. But it depends on, like, again, which kind of just goes back to my point. And that's why I love what you're doing is like, you know, so let's say that the joint or other companies or other chiropractors, they fix that part up, you know, because that's really the point, man, is that, like, you know, it's like, you know, dentists aren't looking for patients. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, so their training is really just how do you fix the problem? Okay. And how do you deal with the patients and that sort of thing. And that's kind of the environment I'm in right now. That's what I kind of get to do. I don't have to, I'm not bringing them in. I'm bringing the referrals in, you know, but now how many of those people am I keeping? Am I growing the practice? You know, that's a whole nother, you know, conversation. And that has to do with, you know, how solid you are on your philosophy. You know, do you think chiropractic is a lifetime endeavor, or do you think it's a one and done kind of thing? You know, that's the thing. And that's on the other side. That's on the school side. So if the joint or other companies, um, you know, correct hey, the field is white. We need people. The joint needs people so bad. I mean, like, there are so many clinics that need chiropractors right now. So that gets into the whole other conversation. It's like, I know that people want to be entrepreneurs and people want to be Instagram famous and people want to make lots of money. But if we're talking about, like, okay, how about, you know, people served? There are a lot of people that need to be served, and there's a lack of chiropractors in for certain in that model. So you're talking about a company that is bringing people to the door. What are you doing with them? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing with them? Are you even there? Are you even in the
Mm-hmm.
game, bro? You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like, are you even there, man? I mean, it's
Well,
like, you know,
I look at that as being like the joint is the brain, just like the schools places like The Joint, organizations, associations, technique companies, seminar companies, these quote unquote influencers in chiropractic that are either coaches or they run events. These are all the brain cells, and the tissue cells are the students, the pre-chiro students, the chiro students, the budding chiropractors, like the new fresh chiropractors, even chiropractors that are not on purpose, that have been in practice for 20 years or 10 years, and probably don't even last that long. But the point is the amount of subluxation in between the brain cell and the tissue cell in our profession, it's so incongruent with our message. This project, I'm just one person, right? But I'm leveraging the internet to have conversations with people like you and like my buddy Daryl, for example. He worked for The Joint. I don't think he still works for them, but he worked for The Joint to create trainings that kept it on message with chiropractic. Maybe he's the reason that word subluxation was in your online training, because I think he
Right.
worked on that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
he sees the potential. It's a huge potential to reach
It's insane.
people, but it's all about like, all right, The Joint, if they have that many offices as a corporation, they're making over 10 to $100 million a year, maybe over more than that. I don't even know. But how is that money being spent to benefit the profession? You know, I always
Yeah.
bring people on here that are like, they're millionaires. I mean, I'm a millionaire and I'm not even a high volume. I see about 40 people a day. I'm not high volume, but I'm enjoying practice. Let's not get into me. It's not about it, but the point is I know I have money and I know people have more money than me. And it's like, where's that money going? Not that they should be putting it to the profession if the profession's not going to spend it the way they want it spent. But it's like, can we create projects where it's like, hey, if you want to put money to this project, this is what it's going to. Like, it's not
Yeah, I
going to
love that.
someone's pocket.
Yeah, I love that. I do know that, joint owners do make contributions in various ways, with their checkbooks. I know that, the joint does, contribute monies to Sherman, for example, Life University, stuff like that, uh, and, again, and I think like I'm with you, it's like it's a work in progress. And I think one of the things that like, that I'm seeing with this whole like inflation stuff and, the labor shortages and that sort of thing is that I can see in the short term where the demand for chiropractic, for example, at a place like the joint is driving up the cost. So I mean, I'm telling you, I mean, you can make more money at the joint than you're going to make at the average family chiropractic office. I'm telling you, it's a mind blower. I can't believe it myself. Um, where I started hearing these stories, and I also look at, there's chiropractors that post their jobs, their associate positions wanted online, and I'm like, wow, that's a whole lot of responsibility for, not too much money, and you can do, and you can basically, deliver the goods at a joint clinic and probably make the same, and so the market is also kind of, you know what I mean? It's like it's not just philosophical and stuff like that. There's also like the market, is doing things, and making changes, and in a lot of different ways, and that's like a whole other conversation. There's some like basic stuff to like success that like one of the first things that I thought was just like funny is like when I started the joint, I'm doing a consultation with somebody, one of my first consultations, and I was like, when was the last time you were at a chiropractor? And they were like, oh, about 2 weeks ago. And I was like, okay, who was it? And I knew who they were, the local chiropractor. Okay. And then, well, why, can I ask you a question? Why aren't you there today? And they're like, hell, I think he's semi-retired. I go there, it was closed. It says, the sign says lunch, but it's a 3-hour lunch. I don't know if they work Tuesday. I don't know if they work Thursday. And I remember just all the conversations, especially early on, like when we were involved with the membership practice Facebook page and stuff, and all that stuff, and people talking about how to do things to be successful, and I was sitting there and I was like, well, the joint's open 7 days a week, and you got a lot of chiropractors that are trying to be out here and be open 2.5, and it's not about that they need to work 7 days a week, but um, think bigger, get a staff, get people working on the weekends, that sort of thing, because there is sort of that market, that competitive market where, um, and I just, and that's what I mean. Like I have a chiropractic heart and I'm all full of love, but there's a lot of real stuff. Like, yes, your patients will leave you. Yeah. It's like, you're not the only doc in town, you're not the best, you're like, there might be somebody better than you. There's a lot of stuff that like, don't get in your head, you know, um, that way, and that's another talk about, talk about one of the greatest things you can do in practice is like just be free of all that, the results, the ego, you know, you're really working for your, whatever I say I work, that I work for God. My mission is to take care of God's people, and I do that through chiropractic care. That's my purpose, right?
Mhm.
So for me, I know I'm doing good if I'm in the office and, and when they leave and they're like, "Hey doc, I'm leaving. I'm never going to see you again." And I know I'm doing good if I go, "Oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure. I hope all the best for you. You know, I love you. You're always welcome to come back. Oh doc, we're going to miss you." That sort of thing. Instead of, last week they were telling me I saved their life, and you go through that stuff. I mean, that's like, and again, you're talking about these conversations with students, and there's all that mindset stuff, and where's the mindset, to be in all that. So that's one of the beautiful things is that I'm practicing, the last few years in a space of like, I don't react, I have no expectations, um, that sort of thing. And the patients are, and it's more fun, it's just a lot more fun. And people get results and they leave great reviews. I'll go on Google sometimes because my staff will say like, "Man, you have got to read these reviews," and because I rarely do, and then I go on there and I'm just like, "Wow," and so that's I love that, um,
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to go
but
off on a tangent
yes,
before.
I hear you. Right? Yeah.
I love where you're coming from, and I kind of want to pose to you like what's your vision for the profession? That's kind of where I was going with that if I was going to
Yeah.
actually shape it into a question.
Yeah. I think this is the one thing I don't worry about being out of work. You know, there's a demand for what we do. Okay. We've screwed up on the messaging or the delivery or whatever. We've screwed up on some, like you're saying, the subluxation is somewhere between the brain and the body or whatever. But you know, I never worry about being out of work. Listen to this. A few years back, I lived in a different neighborhood, on the opposite side of town. I got a knock on the door. It was like a Sunday afternoon, and there's a woman there crying. Come with me, come with me. So I go with her. I follow her to another house. I go in there. There's a mother with a baby. The baby is crying. The baby can't move her arm. Okay, baby. I mean, like months old. Okay, and so it turns out the baby had a nurse's elbow. Now, this isn't, totally chiropractic, but I was like, okay, wham, put that thing back in, adjusted her atlas. Baby was fine. So two nights ago here, maybe Monday night or Tuesday night, I'm at the office. I get a text. It's the dad of that little girl. So I call him back. The girl's got the same thing. Now she's 4 years old. They drive all the way across the county, all the way across the county. Okay. Come here. I adjust the baby. The arm goes back fine, no problem. Okay. Atlas and elbow. And I don't do, believe me, I don't do, this isn't a, I don't do, as a matter of fact, if you come into the joint and you're like, "Hey, will you yank on my knee?" I'm probably going to show you some exercises. I'm going to make you do them. You're going to be so mad at me about that. You're never going to ask me about your knee again. So, I mean, and that's like, and I do it in a very, I try not, I try to, I want people to get the subluxation concept, not the rack on every joint concept. Because that's another problem, I don't want to get too much into, but I don't. I think you're a jerk if you don't pop somebody's elbow back in and you can do it, in a way. But that doesn't mean that that's what the practice of chiropractic is, and you shouldn't be doing it on every visit with every patient, that sort of thing. That's just my opinion, but and not to be too controversial. But anyway, that wasn't even the point. The point was, that I feel like I'm never going to run out of work. And these people drove all the way across 2 counties, to my house. Okay, and when you're on and you're just doing it right, it's like you work all day. I mean, you're adjusting people all day, nonstop, through the weekends. The mother-in-law comes over, the neighbors come over, you know, then you got all your visits in the office, and it's just like, it so so that's what I see. The vision for the profession is that, and that's how I feel. I feel like I'm in an environment where, I'm on a team with people that are smarter than me, and yes, I think they do need some influence, especially from the caregiver, and our perception. I do try to influence that about what I think it is, how I think it should be delivered, done, procedurally, scripted, all that sort of thing. Um, but I do see where I see more and more people going to chiropractors. I take care of doctors, nurses. I mean, um, more and more people that would never have tried it before. More and more elderly folks are coming in, and they can't use, they're not using Medicare, but they still want to be with us anyway. And I see more and more and more of that. So I think that's just going to keep happening more and more because it's a very distinct, unique service. And in a way, just to put it in a, I guess, marketing terminology or whatever, it's like, there is I think like a battle of the brands, and I think that that's why the Joint is very successful because everybody wants their old timey chiropractic experience. I hear that all the time. I hear that all the time. You know, why are you here? And it's like, well, the last guy was putting me on tables and roller tables and this and that, and I just want that. My old chiropractor used to do. Up my back, and that's their words. I'm not trying to be philosophically appropriate here, but so. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, that's what people want. It's like people want that. They want that experience. So it's the same thing with like, influencers on Instagram. I hear it all the time. I don't have like too much against it. I do think it's encouraging people to rack their own necks and other people's necks. And I'm seeing an uptick of people coming in with that damage. I put my hands on somebody. I'm like, you rack your own neck. I know within seconds. It's just so obvious. And they're like, how the hell do you know that? And I was like, I've been doing this for 17 years. And what you're doing is you're wearing out all your ligaments. You're causing all kinds of pressure, And so I think that's one bad thing about those videos. But the good thing about those videos is that people are coming in and they're like, I'm like, have you seen this before? I've watched thousands of videos. They'll say, I've watched thousands of hours of it. Okay, great. So now at that point now, you got to pivot them to like, they've just seen something on TV with out of context, really, there's no, and then pivot them to, well, this is really, maybe why they're doing it. This is why we do it. And then attach the education to it and, the philosophical components to it and that sort of thing and managing the expectations and that it's not a one and done thing, that sort of thing. So, and that's what I think the school training should be about is like, because they're not filling cavities on the internet. I mean, well, maybe they are, but but everybody knows why they're doing it and they do it the same way, for the same reasons, So it's a two-part thing. Yeah, let's get the corporate side a little more on that stuff, but at the other hand, we got to get those students because they could very well end up in a situation where they go work at a place like the Joint. And what are you going to do? You're just going to keep letting 7 out of 10 people walk out of that place after one visit? Wow.
Does the Joint have any involvement in the student experience at any of the schools right now? Do they offer training?
No. I think that they are. The only thing that I really know, I don't know of anything like really specific, but I do know that they contribute, and I know that they, kind of always have a booth up at, I know like locally. I'm not too local to Life University is in Marietta, about an hour away from me, an hour and a half. And I know they try to be there, and talk to people and stuff like that. So I know they do that, but I think that's a really good idea to try to get, but it's one of those things too, where it's like, and not to get again a little too nasty, but it's like, if a company is going to, contribute monies, then there's got to be, Gil Lamarche, is that his name? I don't know how I just see him on Facebook. He just spoke at like the Joint, has an annual conference with all the owners and stuff like that. And I didn't go to that, but I saw that he spoke there. So I think that's great. I think that's really good. Yeah, because I do see, potentially like, I know right now, if we could better train students, we could put them in clinics and they could start adjusting people for subluxations like that right now, So, and, and that's like one of those ideas where it's like, okay, if you can train up and get into that discipline and be trained up, and like I said, go into a clinic like that for a year or two. And then if you want to do your own thing, which I always, I say you can, but this is what it looks like.
So just because you're great at painting a picture and creating scenarios, would you recommend that students essentially reenact what it's like to see 100 people in a day while they're in school? They like basically are just walking around tables with imaginary people on there, going through the physical act of performing what they believe they'll be doing when they're providing adjustments for people, whether it's squatting down or whether it's bending over. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I did that. I didn't do that at the beginning. I eventually did do that when I got frustrated with not, seeing the amount of people that I wanted to see. That's exactly what I did. And you know what I found out? That I couldn't see 100 people even if I was faking it. And that's the whole thing. So a lot of people think, oh yeah, all I need is a busload of patients to show up. And it's like, yeah, well, you probably won't keep most of them, And I remember that being very like, what a huge aha moment for me. I was like, my God, because I came into work and I was doing whatever, I was doing 36 visits or whatever. And I was like, today I'm going to see 100. So I did fake consultations and fake exams and X-ray setups, and I would adjust some people, yes, and I would create I got a headache, doc, and I'd have these conversations, in my, and I heard that from DE too. They talk about Sigafus saying that he was seeing so many people, and so I started doing that, and so one was like the realization that I couldn't do it, even when there was no people, you know. And the other thing that was great, which was really, really, really important for me at that time, was that I would go home feeling like I had worked. I was going home feeling like I had done it. Like in my mind, I was seeing 100 people a day. You know, and you do get the aches and the cricks, or you're seeing, oh yeah, that, and you're experiencing that, and the timing and the procedures and the scripting, and how are you responding? Are you having long conversation? Dilly dallying? Are you moving swift? All that. But the cool thing was that in my mind, I really was, and I mean, I'll tell you what, not too long after that, I really was seeing those people, no doubt about it. And it does a lot of things. I could go on and on about, like, yeah, I mean, like, like the practicing DC or somebody who's new, are you sitting back in your office, on the phone arguing with AT&T, and then when your one patient of the day walks in, what space are you in, man? But if you do the fake visits, and you're up and you're walking those tables and you're seeing those people and you're having conversation, when that one walks in, they're going to think you're in the middle of 100. Hey, happy to see you. Great, doc. How you doing? Near perfect. And then they walk to the table, go face down, do your adjustment, do your analysis, do your adjustment. Hey, thanks for coming in. I'll see you next week. That's great, doc. Okay, bye. And then you do that the next one, and you keep that energy going. It's a game changer, total game changer, no doubt about it.